Hello and welcome to our latest edition of the Business Spotlight series. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Ian Fox from FW Properties. Welcome Ian, it's lovely to have you with us.
Hello, welcome, thank you.
So Ian, can you tell us a little bit to start with then about what it is you do at FW Properties?
Yeah, sure. So I am co-owner of FW Properties with Julian Wells, which we set up in about 12 years ago. We are property developers, principally of residential developments, and now pretty much focused in Norfolk. However, are both chartered surveyors as well. So we've been through the RICS qualifications and exams, and we started life, in other businesses, and set up our company, as I say, about 12 years ago.
Fantastic. And what sort of clients do you typically work with, Ian?
Well, we are generally the client, if I may say. We are developers in the sense that we find development land. We're very much in-house. Although we're a very small team, we're very in-house. We tend to find development land, so that could be greenfield land or brownfield land. We will speak directly to the landowners. We will agree to either purchase it outright, or we purchase that land in an option agreement or some form of promotion agreement. We'll then bring the land forward for planning permission through the local plan process. Again, we do that mostly all ourselves. And then, assuming we get a successful planning permission, we will then bring in the appropriate contractor, a builder themselves, who would then agree a contract with us to build out those houses to the specification, etc., that we approve. And then alongside that, we will also then appoint agents to sell those houses on our behalf. Now, that whole process is managed by ourselves. I've made it sound very simple and straightforward, but it's incredibly complicated. There's an awful lots of overlap happens all the way through. There's many hurdles we have to cross along the way, but we effectively, as developer, hold everything together. But we are very much outsourcers of those professional reports and professional inputs. We don't have in-house too much. Yeah.
Sure, and absolutely sounds like a complex process that you make sound very simple, Ian. When you think about running the business itself, what is it that you enjoy the most about what you do?
About what I think running the business itself, and having your own business, it's just great to be in control and to very much make your own decisions. We, say myself and Julian as co-owners, we sit next to each other in the office. There's only 5 of us in the office. We can make very quick decisions. We're very flexible. We can, change direction as a business very much as we want to, and fairly quickly as well. So, I mean, running your own business, that is one of the benefits. I think, having been an employee for many years myself, I think I like to be able to justify everything we do based on our own decisions. And so far, so good. Our track record has been, pretty successful.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess there's obviously been a lot of change in the economy over recent years, particularly since COVID. Have you had to make any particular changes in the business, anything that you've had to adapt as a result?
We've made minor modifications, as you might expect with COVID. It did unfortunately require one member of staff to be laid off, which was not something we wanted to do. But as I say, we're a fairly small compact team, so we outsource our structural engineers reports. We'll outsource our environmental reports. We'll outsource our archaeological or main contracting. So we don't have too many employees directly in the business, so we didn't have to, fortunately, we didn't have to I wasn't affected too much by COVID. Otherwise, with COVID, simply, a slowdown in the marketplace, so therefore we had to be wary of our financial commitments so that we did not get ourselves out of control. Bear in mind, sales slowed down, building contracts stopped. But it didn't affect us too badly, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Really good. And I think businesses generally are starting to feel like we're coming out the other side of that as well, which is great. Thinking about the industry in general, then, what do you think the biggest opportunities are coming up in the coming years?
For our industry, well, we have, I suppose, the biggest opportunities is we're just still not building enough houses in this country, as you will have read many times in government policy, and there's still not enough houses for private homeowners and also rental homeowners as well. And I think the opportunity therefore in development is just to build more. Now, that's not as easy as you might imagine because there are a lot of controls over development, new development, the biggest one being planning, of course. And we have to support the planning authorities to enable them to process, if you like, our applications as quick as possible, because that is the biggest hold up. There's plenty of land out there, plenty of land coming forward. A lot of the big what I call house builders, your national house builders, they've got large land banks which they could start to develop more quickly. But we are getting wrapped up as a country in so much legislation now. There's so many more reports that have to be produced on absolutely everything before we can start development. And those reports have to be read by the planning officers who ultimately recommend an application for approval or not, which then goes to a planning committee, and the committee members have to also understand those reports before they actually make that decision. And there is just so much more paperwork now, so many more reports to read. And the latest one in Norfolk, if you weren't already aware, is something called neutrality, which again, it's all about making sure that the water is clean that comes out of new developments, and no worse than it was for what that land was used before. It's different to what we're hearing the public about the water authorities dumping raw sewage into the rivers, but it's linked, if you like, in that we're trying to make all our rivers and waste and surface water much cleaner. And that nutrient neutrality, sorry to digress, but that has held up development for 12 months so far in Norfolk. Any new sites coming on forward, and they're hoping to resolve that soon. And but that's just, I say, another one of the constraints and that we have ahead of us. Yeah.
Yes, of course, and those constraints operating at industry level by the sounds of it. When you think about yourself and Julian as co-owners running the business day to day, what's the sort of challenge that you face in running the business?
Well, I think we don't have too many staff. Often staff, sadly, are a challenge, and there's nothing against staff. It's just that we have to always protect their welfare over and above anything else, and we don't have too many of those. So finance is another challenge, and we're fortunate in that we have now been going for 12 years. Both Julie and I come from a professional background. We're both chartered surveyors. We, I suppose, approach things in a professional manner, and we have got a track record now that we can go to our funders, our banks, and they are happy to support us. But I think finance is always a challenge. We've seen interest rates going up, base rates going up, and that puts a strain on our cash flows and our cash flow model for developments. As you know, when we first move in and source a site to when we finally sell our last house, we can be anything from 4 to 6 years. And in all that time, we are funding cash flowing reports, land acquisition, of course, and house building itself. And that takes a toll on so if you start and interest rates are at 0.5% and you finish at interest rates are at 7%, you can see it has an impact on the cash flow as it goes through. Yeah.
Yes, of course, and all those learnings as you go through and experience the different fluctuations over the years, I'm sure. And now that you've been running for over a decade, if you could change one thing about the business, looking back to when you started, is the one thing that jumps out that you would do differently?
I don't think that I'm not trying to say we've got it right at all. It's hard to say that there would be one thing we'd do differently. I haven't consulted with Julian, my business partner, on this at all, but I guess off the top of my head, I would say that we could have been bolder, actually. We could have been bolder, and we could have maybe taken more risk. But that's easy to say in hindsight, because I think the one thing we were always sure about was to make sure we were covered our downsides and didn't overexpose ourselves. But now that we've been successful and we've got to where we are, could we have done things bigger and faster earlier on? But I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to anybody. I think that's just a business review, looking backwards, and it's always better to look forwards, frankly. Yeah.
Yes, of course, and there is always the benefit of hindsight when we're looking backwards, isn't there? So,
Yeah.
Ian, finally, if you were to give anyone who is thinking of starting up their own business a piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, I think there's probably lots of advice you could give someone, and I think a lot of these are probably life's lessons as well. Generally, I think we have always tried to ensure that we have robust financial models in place whatever we do. As I sort of briefly explained, finance is incredibly important in development from start to finish, and you can get it horribly wrong, and therefore there needs to be enough checks and balances, there must be enough contingencies involved. And we've never overcommitted ourselves until we knew that we were in a position of reasonable certainty of where we would come out at the end. So I'd always say that, make sure your financial modeling, financial analysis is second to none. And I think you get a lot more respect from banks and funders and the industry as a whole when you continue on a process of success, as opposed to two successes and one failure and then another. You just need to keep going. And I say that's maybe the hindsight, which I mentioned before, about could we have gone bolder earlier, because we have managed to be successful and I think now have a good reputation in what we do.
Really excellent advice. Thank you so much, Ian. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the series with us today. Just before we go, if anyone would like to find out more about FW Properties, where should they go?
Well, we have a website and it's reasonably up to date. Of course, they're never always up to date. So please do, please see our website. It's just fwproperties.com. And I hopefully, and I think on there is an inquiry email. If you'd like to send us any inquiries, that'll come straight through to us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today, Ian.
Not at all. Thank you.